So let's talk about this last 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Whew, I can't even think about it that we've got before this year is over. And here's the fallacy, y'all. We get all caught up. Oh my gosh, I got all this stuff to do before the end of the year, because then January's coming. So before the end of the year, I got to get all this stuff done. And we forget that, yeah, January 1 turns, and then we got nuttiness from January through March, right? The first quarter is insane too. So we're like, well, when this is done, when the year is over, then it'll be better, right? Then we can rest. No. So no, that's not the way that happens. But then this countdown, we start making ourselves really crazy, really crazy. All the stuff we didn't get done already that we feel like we got to do by 12/31. We got folks going on vacation because they saved up their vacation for the end of the year, or they haven't been able to take it because we had something going on. So now you got all the people out, so you can't get stuff done. And how are you going to staff? But you got to let people take their vacation. But then how do you staff with people taking their vacation? If you are running your own business, did I get all the stuff done I needed to do? Are you making a shift? That's what I'm doing. You're making some major shifts, and then you finally get clear the last 6 weeks of the year, right? So then you're scrambling. It is an insane time of the year. Not to mention Thanksgiving in the U.S. that is coming up this week, Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanza, all the stuff that happens, and New Year's, right? All the stuff that happens in this 2-month period. And if you add COVID on top of that, and you add supply chain challenges on top of that, because if I hear one more commercial about you better be buying now. If you haven't bought now, you're going to be missing it. See, this is why in my family, we decided years ago, we don't buy nothing anymore. None of us need anything else. Now, for some of the kids and nieces and nephews stuff, yeah, of course. But adults, we don't buy nothing else. We do experiences. That's what we do. We go on a trip, or we go hang out. We do something else. But we don't need one more thing to put in the house to dust, or to figure out who we're going to give it to later on, right? But we get all caught up in all this craziness, and we don't have a time, or we don't take the time. Let me rephrase that. As Gay Hendricks says in The Big Leap, it's not that there's not enough time. It's how we decide to use our time, right? We don't take the time to pause, practice the pause. If y'all listen to me long enough, you'll hear me say the same things over and over again. It's probably because that's what I really believe in, right? Practice the pause. Take some time to understand what it is that really has to be done between now and the end of the year. Because here's the reality. You are not going to be able to get it all done. It's too late to get it all done in the last 6 weeks. Or if you scramble, because you got to get it all done in the last 2 weeks, what kind of quality are you going to have in getting it done? Is it going to be the same level of excellence that you demand of yourself, right? So instead of, I got to get it all done, and then maybe going even into dorsal where you do nothing, right? You're just ready to put a weighted blanket over your head and just go to bed. Instead of putting yourself in that situation, pause. What are the things that I must get done before the end of the year? Because they're going to impact what I got to do at the first part of the year, right? What are those one or two things? Mom, if you're listening, I'm on the radio. So, yes, I'm on the radio. Mama Young, will you please text my mother and remind her I'm on the radio show? And please let me know that she's okay.
Calling. Answer that. It might be important.
It might be important. You know what, guys? We're going to take a quick break. Let me make sure my mother's okay. I think it's coming. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so we are back, guys. So hopefully, Margot and Mama Young, you're able to get back in. So yes, as Jerry was saying, sometimes that stuff happens. So that was my mother. My mother is fine. So she's fine. Thank goodness she is fine. But I have her on emergency bypass. So even though I have it on do not disturb, it breaks in. So I wanted to make sure that she was okay. So persistence. So what I was saying is, it is really critically important that we do take that pause. We take that pause and we understand what it is that is going on, right? What it is that we really need to do by the end of the year. Because sometimes we've got the list of 400 things, but it's not the 400 things that really need to happen. It really isn't. It really isn't the 400 things that need to happen. What really needs to happen is that one or two things that are going to make a difference for your business or for your life or for your family or for whatever for the end of the year. And everything else can wait. But what it also means is thinking about this whole idea of persistence. And that came up to me this week as I was trying to do the same thing that I tell you guys to do. So I don't ask you guys to do anything that I am not willing to do myself, right? That I don't pursue myself. So we often talk about resilience. We often talk about consistency. We often talk about, showing up and being clear and all those kind of things. Very rarely do we talk about being persistent in the pursuit of our goals, being persistent in the pursuit of additional learning, right? Additional skills, whatever that is. Very rarely do we talk about persistence, but persistence is a key foundational piece of our ability to achieve whatever it is we're trying to achieve. It's critical to be able to do that. Critical. And so if we think about being persistent also gives us the opportunity to stay in flow, right? So if we know what goal we're trying to get to, if we are persistently in pursuit of that goal, then we are not worried about perfection. We're not worried about everything being shiny. I call it the shiny apple syndrome. It may be all wormy on the inside, but we got to be shiny on the outside, right? Persistence is about being relentless in that pursuit of whatever the thing is, the learning, the skill, the opportunity, whatever that thing is. You heard Kyra as the sponsor say she wants every dollar that God has intended for her, right? She is relentless in the pursuit and persistent in the pursuit of that, right? Because she understands that what she has been entrusted to do, she understands how she can be trusted to do that, right? In her service. And so being persistent in our showing up enables us to continue to move in a way that is consistent. Persistence enables consistent, right? So when we look at this end of the year, I really want you guys to think about how can you continue to be persistent in the pursuit of the thing. It also hit me because as I'm looking at some of the shifts I'm making, and you'll be able to see that. I'll have some announcements that are coming here in the next few weeks for some things that are happening. Really getting clear and clean and simple. Y'all, simplicity is hard. Simplicity is hard. It's easy to be complicated. It's really easy to put in a whole bunch of processes and put in a whole bunch of checklists. That's easy. Simple is hard. Simple messages, right? That's why there are people who are exceptional brand and marketing people. They know how to get simple and clean and clear really quickly. Simplicity is not easy. And so to get clear, you have to be persistent in the pursuit of clarity, right? Persistent in finding that thing, persistent in moving forward, persistent in getting better. Because if you are persistent, then every time you fall down, that enables you to get back up, right? That's resilience and persistence go hand in hand. And that resiliency is, yeah, you're really resilient. Every time they put you down, you can get back up, right? You're resilient. But you have to be persistent if you're going to use that resilience to your advantage. You have to continue to want it. You have to be willing to continue to move towards it. That's critical for you to be able to achieve whatever it is you're supposed to achieve or that you want to achieve. And that persistence also gives you, excuse me, it gives you a foundation upon which to really evaluate whether or not what you're persistently pursuing is really the right thing. Because there may be some stuff that turns around. There may be some stuff that looks a little bit different. And I'm hoping Margot and Mama Young are able to get back on. I'm on Facebook too. So hopefully you're able to get back on. And it's still showing up on LinkedIn and Facebook. It is really important that we think about persistency, not as that little bug that flies around, right? We talk about kids almost in a way that you're awfully persistent. We always have kind of a negative connotation in our tone. You've been really persistent. Usually because we're asking for something, right? But the other thing about persistence is persistence can give you or help you sit in your patience. And patience is not my superpower. It is not my superpower, not by any stretch of the imagination. I constantly work on it. And what happened that made me think about this persistent thing this week too is, and there's so much stuff I want to talk to you guys before the end of the year. That's what's on my list. What happened is, I told you guys I got the computer. We talked about that whole, leadership is about solutions and that drama that I went through with Chase and with Apple. And the amazing leader I actually ran into in Apple through the drama, and an incredible person that I ran into with Chase through the drama, who actually understood what solutions really meant. And by the way, I actually did go and do surveys on that, because I do think it's important. We always talk about when we get bad service, it's important for us to pump up good service as well. So if you're going to do one, do the other. But when I got my new computer, I have an external webcam. Now, I got it for my old one because the camera just wasn't that great. And what I like about this one is it gives me an ability to work on the aperture. It could be narrow, it could be wide, it can be all these kind of things. Well, when I first set it up with my new laptop, it didn't work. I mean, the camera turned on, but it didn't let me do anything with the camera settings. So I got these really weird camera settings that I'd already kind of changed the way I'd done some things, because I really wanted to make sure that things were clean. And it didn't let me do it the way I wanted to do it. And I was getting really frustrated. I haven't moved my music over. I haven't moved my photos. It's just a hot mess. And then this morning, because I'm being persistent, right? I am persistent in ensuring I'm doing my podcast. I'm persistent in showing up every day and doing something that gets me where I want to be. Persistent. And so when I turned it on this morning, I said, you know what? Persistence. Let me just try it again. My computer did an update, because there's always an update. New computer did an update. Let's just see. I updated apps and all. Let's just see what happens. Clicked on the camera settings. Oh, they worked. And then I had to figure out which one to do. So I ended up having to record the podcast twice, right? Because I didn't have the right settings, because I couldn't remember what the right ones were. But we figured all that out. But that persistence in saying, you know what? Before I go buy another camera, before I go decide this isn't going to work, before I go have all kinds of conniptions and get my blood pressure all crazy again, I'm going to go try again and see what happens. And then I'll take that data and I'll make a decision. Persistence in the pursuit of what it is we are trying to do. Because had I just given up, or had I just said, oh, here we go again. I've already tried. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work. I can't believe it. New computer. And just sat in that spiral of ugly, right? Of woe is me, of defeated, of I can't believe it. I can't believe this is happening, of all of that kind of stuff. If I had done that, where would I be? I'd still be trying to figure out what was going on. I wouldn't have even tried to click on it to know that it's working again. I wouldn't have been able to do my podcast and put it the way I wanted to put it, so it's consistent with the changes I'm making and the way it's showing up. None of that would have happened had I not been persistent in the pursuit of things working the way I want them to work. I could have just sat down and said, I just can't. I just can't anymore. I just can't anymore. I could have done that. But that's not what I did. I sat in my persistence, like that little gnat that keeps coming around, right? And said, no, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I want to have happen. And there we go. My mom was persistent this morning and calling me, right? Because she's worried. So I'm worried about her. She calls twice. I'm like, uh-oh, something's wrong. She's worried about me because I didn't answer. And normally, if I don't answer, if I'm on the phone, I send a text and say, hey, I can't talk right now. Are you okay? And because I'm on the air, I couldn't do that. But she was persistent in ensuring that her kid was okay, because I'm still her kid. As old as I am, I'm still her kid. That persistence is also what makes us think about what's going on, right? And just sidebar, I am so happy, as Jerry said, not only can we do this on the show, but I work with the producer who's like, no, go ahead and get it. Go ahead and get it. Because we've both been in those places where
Yeah.
we're like, you know what? I should have answered that call. I should have taken that call. It's like, Mom, are you okay? And of course, her response is, yeah, but the phone didn't work. Are you all right? I'm like, yes, I'm on the air. Right? But her persistence gave us a point where we made sure that both of us were okay. Right? Because the world is crazy right now. The world is really crazy. So be persistent. Be persistent in the pursuit of your health. Be persistent in the pursuit of your mental and physical well-being. Be persistent in the pursuit of whatever it is that you believe your purpose is on this earth, because we are all put here for a reason. For a reason. You didn't show up by accident. There's a reason you're here. There's someone who is waiting for you to show up because you have a message or you have an answer that they need. And so if you are in constant pursuit of that thing and you are persistent in your pursuit of that thing, you will not imagine the impact you can make. The impact you can make. Thank you, Mama Young. Yes, she said it was an accident. She forgot. It's okay. Tell her I love her. I'll call her later. So I love doing this show because see, I can talk to my mom. You guys will listen. So it's really, it's just real. You know, that's what we do here. We are just real. Life is real. It is really important that as we think through those ways that we show up and how we show up and when we show up, that we understand that the journey isn't easy and that there's going to be peaks and valleys. There are many, many, many times that I have said, you know what, this is not worth my sanity. Really? Laurel, just go get a job. They need so many HR people right now because they're leaving in droves. Just go get another senior HR executive job. Yeah, no. And I am so supportive of my folks that are doing that. Bless y'all's heart, all you HR people who are trying to hold it down, right? The ones who are really out there operating in integrity and trying to do the right thing, right? I am lifting you up. And continue that pursuit, right? Continue that persistence in holding people accountable for their actions and their words aligning. Continue to do that. But it's really important that we think about that persistence. And when I think about this, 2022 will be year 5 of my business. It will be year 5 that I have left corporate. Now, is everything where I want it to be? No, because as I said earlier, this constant pursuit for me is also this pursuit of clarity. And finally, 5 years in, getting really clear on what I want the business to be, not what everybody else thinks my level of expertise is and what I should be doing, right? Those shoulds will get you every time, every single time. But what is really in my calling to do and being persistent in figuring that out. And part of that persistence for me is also staying consistent in my therapy, right? So I can work through, you know what is this block? And understanding that most of the times when I've got a really serious block is because I'm trying to do something that is not really what I need or want to do. It is something that I feel compelled or I should do, but it may not be the right thing. It may not be the intended thing, but there's something in the universe, or there's something, usually it's not the universe, there's something in society, something that is telling me that I should be doing this other thing that I'm just blocking. Now, there are other things that I'm blocking because of all kinds of old head trash, right, that we're working through. But my persistence in continuing to be self-aware and my persistence in dealing with my own stuff is what enables me to consistently show up and give messages and give support and be the kind of advisor, leader, coach, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, clarity person that I'm able to be for the clients that work with me. It's that persistence in saying, you know what, when it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right. So go figure out what feels right. And persistent in saying, you know what, today, I just can't today. Let me just take a minute. Let me take a pause. Let me take a minute and figure out what's going on so that I can come back stronger tomorrow. But that persistence is what makes us strong, right? For lack of a better word, that persistence, that tenacity. And think about kids, right? There's so much that we can learn from kids, from the mouths of babes. When they want to know something, how many times do they ask you why? until you say, because I said so, right? And even then, you might still get a few more whys. They are persistent in their desire to understand. And at some point, we've lost that high level persistence, that tenacity. And that can be the difference a lot of times between, those who are really big risk takers, those who will just, that makes a difference, innovative, let's just do it and see what happens, because they're also resilient, right? And they're adaptable and they're flexible and they're willing to just fail fast and fail forward, and fail early. So then they can respond and they know what not to do next time, and they know what maybe to do different. That persistent pursuit of the next thing, of the innovative idea. Elon Musk is being successful because he's persistent, right? Branson was successful because he was persistent and insistent that things were possible. Because in that persistence is possibility. When we are persistent, it enables us to think really, really clearly about how and where and why we're going to do some things. Jerry and I were talking about that today. Jerry and I get to have a good conversation before the show starts. And my producer extraordinaire, Jerry P. Beasley, get to talk all the time. And we've been talking about how, we both, during this time, if you think about persistence, during this pandemic, we didn't miss, the only shows we missed, Jerry, during the pandemic were because of weather, right? Or being stuck somewhere. That's it. Mm-hmm. We were here holding it down every week. Now, I was only here on Tuesdays or the occasional extra one. Mm-hmm. Jerry was here every day, right? We were here, masks and everything, mm-hmm. sanitizer, whatever it took. We sprayed it down, right? We showed up and we were persistent in our pursuit of not only this show, but of supporting the station, of moving into the vision that Jerry has for the station and the vision that I have for the Rutledge Perspective radio show and the Rutledge Perspective in general, and how to serve. And so that persistence gave us an ability to be consistent, mm-hmm. and to show up. And it's not easy. It's not easy, because there are times I'll walk in here and I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. And then I'll have 2 seconds with Jerry and that's it. Right? Or something will happen like this time. And I'm like, you know what? No, it's about persistence, because we're starting to get into that crazy hamster wheel of year-end madness. And we just got to stop and breathe and remain persistent in the pursuit of the thing that we want. Consistent in showing up, tenacious about pursuing that thing that not only makes us happy, but we really believe is our purpose, right? I often think to myself in my journaling and that time where I'm meditating and really thinking about what I want to do, and working very diligently to make more time for that. I will admit, I do not make enough time to just sit still. I do sit still, but I don't make enough deliberate time to sit still, purposefully sit still. And that is absolutely one of my 2022 pursuits, is to purposely sit still and productively sit still. But we don't take a lot of time to do that and understand that our persistence in protecting our mental, physical, and emotional well-being, our persistence in holding ourselves and others accountable, right? We are just going after it. But in that persistence, that we also give ourselves a chance to just be still. Because even in persistence, you can be persistent about something that's just wrong. Persistence is a superpower, but even superpowers can be misdirected. Even patience can be misdirected. Because sometimes we can be so patient about something that we are sitting so strong in our patience, and we are so excited about how patient we're being that we miss the thing. Because we've just been waiting. We're waiting for it to come. We're waiting for it to happen. We're waiting for it to show up. We're being patient. But we're not being mindful. We're not being focused. We're not being conscious of why we're being patient and what we are waiting for. We don't hear the message we're supposed to hear. We don't see the opportunity we're supposed to be seeing because we're just reveling in our patience, especially for those of us who don't have a lot of it, right? We're reveling in the thing that we don't have. All of this, guys, all of this stuff that we always talk about, all connects. Resilience connects to tenacity, connects to persistence, connects to patience, connects to mindfulness, connects to consciousness, connects to consistency, connects to grace, connects to trust, connects to kindness, especially being kind to yourself, giving yourself some grace, showing yourself some appreciation. When I look back on five years, I've apparently been pretty persistent. Because again, there's been times when I'm like, no. But I keep coming. I keep coming. And I know you guys do too. I know you do. Even when it doesn't feel like it. I know you do. I have no doubt that you're doing the same thing. That you're being persistent. You're being persistent in that organization that is toxic. You are being persistent in the pursuit of your next move. You're being persistent in the pursuit of that solution for that client. You are being persistent in getting healthier and getting rest and taking care of you and your family. You're being persistent. If one thing came out of this COVID, there are many things. There are many horrible things that came out of this pandemic, but there are some actual really good things that came out of this pandemic. Patience, for one, recognition of a lack thereof, recognition of a lot of the seedy underbelly that many of us already knew was still there, but it's now kind of reared its ugly head. So it's now much more visible. And when it's visible, you can do more about it. Harder to pursue when it's trying to be covert. When it's overt, you can attack it directly. But the other things that came out of this that were good, a focus on what's important, a focus on self-reliance, and a focus on what's important, a focus on prioritization, a focus on showing up in consistency, a return to possibilities, right? So many people started businesses, so many intentionally, right? So many people changed careers. So many people said, yeah, no, not anymore. I'm not going to tolerate whatever the thing is. I'm just not anymore. That's just not something I'm going to do. But here's what I will do, right? We got really clear on a bunch of things. And we're going to have to really sit heavy in that clarity because there's so much stuff around that is just wrong. It's wrong. It's misleading. It is not the truth. It is self-serving. It is harmful to many. And I was going to say, and with all of that, the visibility has also increased. The number of people who are saying, yeah, I'm not okay with that has increased. The number of people willing to say something has increased. Now, that also makes the people who are doing the wrong stuff and lying and cheating and stealing and all these crazy things is making them more tenacious as well and making them more persistent in their pursuit of their agendas, right? So it all gets met. It's like physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The more you make things visible, the more you push against untruth, the more untruth tries to say it's true, right? That's what happens. It's just the law of nature. The more you try to uncover it, the more it tries to bury it or switch the narrative. But in this madness, we've had so much of that come forward that we get a chance to call the narrative what it is when it's wrong. And we get to tell people, your narrative is contrary to truth and contrary to facts. And it's okay if it's your narrative, but I don't have to buy into that. And every time I hear it publicly, I'm going to call it out that it is not true. There was a posting yesterday that somebody said there was someone who was all upset because, I am being persecuted because I'm being called out all the time. Every time I appear on CNN or wherever, they always ask me questions like, where did you get that data? What is your proof behind that? How do you know that's true? Where's it showing up? And I'm just being persecuted. It's not happening anywhere. It's not happening in my real life. Well, maybe it's because in your real life, you surrounded yourself by yes people. Maybe in your real life, you surrounded yourself by folks who aren't going to tell you the truth and just going to lift you up. Or more importantly, you have surrounded yourself by people who are just waiting for you to be taken down. And so they're going to keep pumping you up because they're just waiting for your fall. Maybe that's it. You think? Because it's not a persecution for someone to ask you, where's the data on that? Where'd you get that? What makes you think that? Where'd you find that? And for you to sit in and say, just cause. I had somebody asking me about timeshares not too long ago. I'm like, nope, I don't do timeshare. Well, how do you know? No, not interested. But how do you know? What is your data for that? I'm like, well, I had a cousin who did it. And they're like, yeah, so you don't have any direct, I absolutely do not have direct proof. I absolutely do not. I know that when we were little, we used to go to those things. We have to sit in all those meetings. And they say, well, if you sit in the meeting, you get the big TV. And what it really was some kind of cardboard thing with a projector, right? Mm-hmm. To buy some timeshare. It was a bait and switch. But I do know people who have had a hard time, right, with timeshares. But the person kept pushing me and said, but where is your data? Where is your actual proof? I had zero, other than my own sentiment. And so that's what I said. I said, you know what? You're exactly right. I have zero data that's not anecdotal, and I still don't want to do it. I don't want to have anything to do with timeshares because, see, the stuff I do read, the little I have read about the contracts and people trying to get out and all that kind of stuff, no. And there's nothing I want to be locked into forever and have to pass down to people. No, I just don't want it, right? But I own my own stuff. I own the fact that I didn't have any data.
Quick question.
Yeah.
But is the fact that you experience people who have had because I just had this conversation.
Yeah.
I don't want timeshare.
Right.
Because I just don't. Why? Where's your data? Well, I know somebody who's already.
I know somebody who knows somebody, right?
There's a lawsuit behind this, and
right.
It's a struggle. So is the fact that you trust the data that came from your friends or people that you know personal, is that not enough data? Or is that saying you still didn't really?
That's interesting because it does depend on who you're trusting, right? Because you can't trust everybody and can't trust everybody's experience. And these people that I know went through it, this person happens to be really, really frugal like me and reads every single word of a contract. So I was stunned when she and her husband even entered into it. I mean, you could have picked me up, knocked me over with a feather. I was stunned. And then they had to go through the whole process of getting out. And so I think, so to your question, one, it can be enough data if your source is trustworthy, but it is still anecdotal data, right? So you still got to own what the data is. It's not your direct experience, right? It is not necessarily unbiased because the person you're getting it from has their own bias. That doesn't mean the data is bad, depending on who they are, right? That's why I say go get reliable data. Right. Your friends, your villagers, right, are going to tell you the truth, even if it hurts your feelings. They're going to tell you the truth. Not everybody has your best interest in mind. So some people are going to tell you what you want to hear. Some people are going to lie because it's in their best interest, right? So when you are getting data, whether it's anecdotal or direct, just check your source. Check your source. And if your source is unreliable, then just know that. Or if your data is anecdotal, even if you trust your source, because you know your source, you've had enough experience with the source to be able to trust the data, just know it's anecdotal. It's not your direct experience. You are basing your opinion on someone else's direct experience. And just know that and own it. It's okay. It's okay. But it is important as we pursue things to understand what we're pursuing and why. And to be persistent around it. And understand that everything taken to an extreme can become a weakness. Being persistent in pursuit of the wrong thing is still wrong. So your persistence can really get you something, right? It can. If you're just tenacious and you're persistent, you can get to 1,000 jumps in your jump rope, without stopping. You can get to that lift. You can get to that row. You can get to that scuba diving thing. You can achieve the goal that you have if you are persistent.
Mm-hmm.
Because that persistence will help you work through the setbacks, because there's always going to be setbacks when you're pursuing something. But if you're persistent in pursuing the wrong thing, it's still wrong. The persistence doesn't make it right. The resilience doesn't make it right. The tenacity doesn't make it right. The consistency doesn't make it right. It's still wrong. The persistence just means you'll get it. You will get it, but that doesn't make it right. So let's not confuse the two. Let's not confuse that the superpower of persistence with pursuing something that is the right thing for the right reasons in the right time to provide the right solution. Those are two completely different things, or several completely different things, right? So going into this year and this end of the year, that trying to figure out how we're going to be persistent, the other piece of that is persistent about what? That's why I said, go back and look at that list of 400 things that you got, because I'm looking at you. I know you got it because I got it. That list of 400 things, what are the couple you're going to do? And do well, that are going to make the biggest impact for where you want to go. But that requires taking some time and taking a pause. And this is a physician heal thyself, pot kettle moment. Because as I said earlier, I don't always take that time that I need to. I'm thinking now as I'm talking to y'all, I'm like, oh, my list. Because, I'm not fighting the grocery store tomorrow. So I got to make sure I do that today. And I got to go pick up prescriptions today. And I got to go drop off books today. And I still got work to do today. So all that stuff is going on. I told y'all I got a messy mind. All that stuff is going on in my head as I'm talking to you. But I am going to be persistent in the pursuit of those two things that I have said I'm going to complete by the end of the year. And that means some things just don't get done. And it makes me crazy. So let's be clear. It doesn't make me happy that stuff's not getting done. I don't celebrate that stuff isn't on my list, right? I don't. It irritates me to no end. And yet that's part of my maturing process. I am learning to just let that stuff go. Because it's not like it won't be there tomorrow. It'll be there tomorrow. That and other stuff, right? It's like the list grows babies. Other stuff will be on the list tomorrow too. And then tomorrow I get to make a decision, right? Here's all the things I decided to do today. Do those still make sense? If not, is there something else I need to move? Is there something that happened, that occurred, that makes me need to make an adjustment? And then I do that because my persistence is in the pursuit of something bigger. And so as long as I keep my eyes on that prize, then I can evaluate all the other stuff along the way in a much more clear, right? A much more reasonable manner when I'm on my game, because we all have those days when we're just not reasonable.
Well, can I pose a question?
Yes.
When you say that? Because when we first got on the air and I was looking on Facebook and then this memory popped up of me and some ladies that I had some years ago here. And I said, oh, I was so sad. My mom was sick at that time. And I was just so sad, but I was trying to keep it all together and keep the station going. And you said, but I can see it in your eyes. Yeah. And when I looked in my eyes, I'm like, yeah, if you really looked in my eyes, you could see I was tired. I was worn out. But I was so excited when I saw that memory today because I said, I'm so glad, even though I was hurting, I was still persistent. And now I'm seeing the manifestation of what I spoke all those years ago. You and I, when you just said about what coming to the station. And I remember jokingly, but I meant that spraying you down with lights off. Like, walk through the lights off. She did. Honey, walk through this lights off cloud. But we still came with our mask on until we got to the boosters and to the shots and all of that kind of stuff. Yes. So how do you know when it's something you are supposed to be? Because it was painful, but that wasn't meant for us to do it. It was. How do you know?
And I think that is such a deep question, Jerry, and that is something that I am in constant pursuit of as well. And it gets back to that conversation we've had multiple times, right? When something doesn't feel right, if something keeps sticking at you, and it just doesn't feel right, you need to pause and figure out why. But that's all about self-awareness, because sometimes we get so focused on the thing we want, we don't stop to see if it's really something that we're supposed to have. If we're supposed to be doing, we get so, they call it myopic, right? Tunnel vision on the thing that we discount and disregard all of the other indicators about whether or not that's the right thing. We don't hear the messages. We don't see the red flags. We don't hear the bells going off because we are determined to get that thing. And we forget, and as my friend Lanier says all the time, sometimes rejection is protection. Sometimes you don't have the thing because it's not meant for you. Sometimes you don't have the thing because it is actually bad for you. It's not your thing. And we have a hard time when it's something we really, really want if it's not meant for us. And so we keep pursuing it anyway. We keep pursuing it anyway. And sometimes we are so programmed to just pursue it that it takes a real fall to understand it's not for us. You know, I had a tremendous career. I'm very proud of the career that I had in corporate. I worked my butt off to get where I was, right? And I could have stayed. I absolutely could have stayed. I could have stayed. I could still be there today, right? But when I thought about and really gave myself the opportunity to think about the impact of that success and what it was doing to me, that next move was just not the right move for me. It was a move I could have taken. It was a job I could have done. I could still be there making really, really good money, right? And taking care of some things differently. But it wasn't the right thing. And I knew it wasn't the right thing because I had a moment where I just had to stop, right? What is that saying? If you don't make time for your wellness, your illness will make you stop and take care of it.
Ooh, dang.
I said that wrong, but y'all know with me. Yeah. If you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for that's it. If you don't make time for your wellness, you will be forced to make time for your illness. It's that same thing. When you hit the wall, if you're like me, when you hit it, you hit it. You really hit it. And it forces you to stop. And so I always say a big piece of self-awareness is trying to get to understand before you have to hit the wall to get it. Right? Now, I always say God has the burning bush for me. I don't read signs real well. I'm trying. I'm working on it. And I've gotten much better at being still because that's when you hear what you're supposed to hear. Stillness is where you hear the answers, right? Stillness is where you get the direction. Whatever your thing is, right? That stillness is where you really give yourself opportunity to hear and get clear. And when I got still, that's when I was like, yeah, just no. And the other way I knew that what I was pursuing or what I was continuing to do wasn't the right thing is when I said no, I had so much peace.
Girl, yeah.
I had so much peace. When you reject something that you think you have wanted all along and it's like a weight is lifted, you know you made the right decision. Because there was too much involved. And I don't mean when something's just hard, right? Because really great things aren't easy. They're not. I don't mean just difficult, challenges. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when something just really wrecks your spirit. Right? When it's so hard that you are not sleeping on Sunday nights. You are dreading going into work. You're dreading doing that. When you are sitting in dread and you finally get rid of that, that's when you know you made the right decision. Because there's so much peace. There's so much peace in that. It's like, wow, why didn't I know that before, after I spent all this time? So yeah, for me, that's how it is, Jerry. It's that, you got to pursue, but you got to pay attention. And sometimes we get so focused on the chase that we stop paying attention. We stop paying attention. Is what we're chasing still what we need to be chasing? Mm-hmm. And where did that chase take us, right? I think about some of those movies when people start chasing somebody and they're not paying attention. They're just trying to catch them. Next thing, they wind up in some dark alley somewhere because they haven't been paying attention to their surroundings. They're just paying attention to the chase. Mm-hmm. That's why I say being persistent in and of itself can be a superpower, but anything taken to an extreme can be a weakness. If you are so persistent that you're no longer paying attention to what's going on around you, that persistent can get you in that dark alley by yourself with someone who does not have good intention for you. Persistence also needs to have mindfulness associated with it in order for it to really take you where you want it to take you, in order for it to be what you want it to be. Just a thought. Just a thought. I mean, Jerry, maybe a little you know, what we've talked about when you think about where you're going with the radio station and all that, and talk about that persistence for you, what does that mean?
What does persistence mean for me? Meaning that I know when, I like what you just said about when you know it's not for you to do and you stop, then there's a burden that's lifted. I had that happen for me this week. Like, I don't know, but I know that I made the right decision because I feel like a weight has been lifted off of me. But when it becomes to something that I know that God has purposed me to do, even when I get weary, he'll send a push and I'll feel something to be like, okay, I got a second wind, I'm ready to do that. So that's what persistence is for me. Doesn't mean that I don't ever get weary or think, oh, man, I don't do this any longer. When I know it's for me to do, there's a push that always comes for me to do it. And the resources and everything lines up.
Yes.
Even though it's hard, it still lines up some type of way. If I don't see anything lining up, it's not for me to do.
See that, and that's the other thing. That's the other thing that happened when I knew it was time to leave. Things just lined up. They just lined up.
That's good.
That's how you know, right? If you're really paying attention and you're persistent, if you're persistent in the pursuit of what's meant for you, right, in that goal, but if you surround that goal, that thing you want, with what's meant for me, then you're able to move that persistence in the way it needs to be moved. So that if you get things aligned, you keep moving. But if things get unaligned, or you get those messages that say, whoop, then you can still be persistent, but your direction is shifted a little bit. But you got to listen. You got to be mindful. You got to be willing to change. You got to be willing to move. You got to be willing to morph. You got to be willing to think just a little bit differently. That it's not always about the thing. Sometimes the victory is in the journey, not in the destination. Because the destination may change. The thing may change. The overall goal, the overall strategy may be the same, but the actual thing may be different. So go back and look at your list for all the stuff you say you got to do for the end of the year. What do you really have to do? And is that still in pursuit of the overall strategy and direction that you feel you've been led to do? Is all that still consistent?
I got to say this when you said that, but the thing, you can't be about the thing because the thing can change. You said something about it, it can think, but the purpose of the thing. Yes. And I'm thinking about this venue that we have here at the radio station. It's called The Difference on Alameda, but I called it first That Funny Comedy Spot. And I said, why would you call it that? You had the difference, the venue on the other side of Alameda, and you stopped that. That was some years ago, and it served its purpose for that time. Right. He said, but now you're going to be the difference on Alameda, on the corner of Alameda and Wichita, with all this other stuff going around. And so when you said that, it was like, just because he closes the door for one season, you may think, okay, that season is over. He says, no, that location was over. Right. Now I'm going to bring you into another season. The purpose is still the same. Yes. You just might have to be open to doing it at a different place. And just like you've been in business for 5 years, I see people who say they're entrepreneurs and want to be an entrepreneur, and they try it for 6 months, 7 months, and it doesn't work to them. Right. And then they go do something else. Right. What would happen if you take the time out to really master the thing like human resources, what you're doing? To master that, and then everything else, like the podcast, the radio show, it falls under that umbrella. And a lot of times we don't get to the umbrella because we left because we couldn't take the heat. Yeah. And that's critical too, because one of the things I talked about today when I was recording the podcast is, you know, I am determined to get a doctorate before I leave this earth, determined to get a doctorate. I always thought it was going to be an MD. And then, you know, that clearly is not what it was. That was not what was meant. But definitely want to do this doctorate. And I know as I've talked to people about that and other people who are pursuing things and all this kind of stuff, it's like, man, but it's going to take so long. It's going to take so long. It's going to take so long. You know, it's going to take me 6 years. It's going to take me 12 years. It's going to take me 5 months, whatever. And my grandmother used to say this all the time too. And it's like, but it's going to be 5 months from now anyway. So how about it be 5 months or 2 years or 6 years or 12 years from now? And you've got the thing, as opposed to all that time passing and you still don't have the thing. You've done nothing. You find yourself in the same spot. So that pursuit, that persistence in understanding the overall purpose at least can give you direction and energy to move in imperfect action. Say that again, Lord.
That energy, that persistence give you an opportunity to move in imperfect action. Because at least if you move and you start doing something, you get some data to make another decision. If you're not doing anything but sitting, how do you know? You could go pursue I could go pursue a doctorate and say, I want to do, a PsyD, and then get in there and say, maybe it's really an EDD, or maybe it's a PhD. But if I don't start something, I won't know. If I just sit and keep marinating, nothing will happen, right? It's that whole idea of being patient. As I said earlier, you can be patient, right? And I've got a friend who is the most patient person on this earth. I've never seen anybody this patient. You can be patient, but don't let your patience turn into complacency, because that would happen. We'll put the patience pretty stamp on it, but what we've really done is we've given up and decided we don't want to make the effort, because it's going to take effort to do whatever it is. And that's not what we want to do, right? So with that, one, thank y'all for being patient this morning with our little pause on the Rutledge Perspective Radio Show, because we took a little pause this morning. So thank you for being patient with our pause. Thank you for tuning back in. Thank you for being a part of this show and for continuing to show up like we showed up, me and Jerry.
Yeah.
Thank you for continuing to do that. We are going to be back next week, and through the end of the year, I actually have another encore show. I don't know which week I'm going to be doing 2 shows yet, but look for another double week coming up in December. I do hope that all of you take some time this week. For those of you in the U.S., hopefully get a chance to really spend some time with family that you didn't get to see last year, that you don't dive into the argument about stuff in your dress, and that you just enjoy each other's company. And if you eat that green bean casserole, bless your heart, So I hope you guys get a chance to enjoy yourselves and each other. Please be safe. Please, mask up, vaccine up, do whatever you need to do to keep you and your family safe. Try to find a way to appreciate yourself today and appreciate those around you. Remember to be persistent, but a mindful persistence, and to give yourself some grace and some kindness. I will see you next week on Tuesday for the Rutledge Perspective Radio Show Live. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
They all said good morning.
Good morning.
Great show. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Love you guys. See you next week. Bye.